We headed into the mountains by night, and my fellow Brandylow and I needed no moon to guide us. The totem was leading us unerringly towards the towering mountain not far from the farmhouse, and even from here it looked cold and foreboding. Most of the Brandylow here were faces I knew from the park, but some of them were new to me. Randy hadn't been kidding when he said that he'd picked up quite a merry band. There were about 30 in all, and they were dressed in an odd assortment of cast-off clothes. Some of them were things that were clearly stolen from clotheslines or donation boxes, but some of them were the long-traveled garments of professional vagabonds. I could see raincoats and parkas and long coats and all other sorts of all-weather gear. There were just as many backpacks and rucksacks and traveling bundles, too. Some of them had armor, poor stuff made from sheet metal or rubber tires, but a few of them had body armor that looked salvaged from dumps or landfills. Their weapons were mostly wooden, clubs and tree limbs, but a few of them had machetes and knives. One of them, dressed in military digital camos, had an assault rifle around his back on a strap, though who knew if he had any ammunition for it. They all deferred to Randy, but it appeared that he had picked up a few undergenerals as well. "Cannon over there," he said, as he pointed out the tall Brandylow with the faded flak jacket, was a private security guy for nearly a decade. Marta, he pointed to another one in homemade leather armor, she fought in the Crusades. At least that's what she says. She's fierce enough, I know that. Devon, he pointed to a lean fellow in something I can only describe as a tire vest. He was in the Blitz during World War II. The lady has more Brandylow than we ever knew of. Some of them don't even know she's back yet. It seemed that we had found some real warriors to help us, and not a moment too soon either. The Barker was still with him too, keeping pace in his old black suit that seemed immune to mud and stains. The Gordling was there as well, yarking and running at the head of the group, and I was glad the two of them had made it. The Barker had been our enemy once, but it appeared that he might now be with us. He had been very interested in the totem, but I had kept it away from him when he tried to touch it. The totem was interested in him, too, and until he proved untrustworthy, I didn't want to sacrifice him to the hungry rock. He had smiled sadly when I pulled it back. "Old prejudices die hard, I see." "It's nothing like that," I assured him. "It's just that, well, it's already eaten one of the Green Man's allies, and you seem to be less on his side these days." That led to a story about the Whistler and how he had come looking for me on the bus. Randy seemed almost giddy when he heard that he was gone. "Whew, that's one less we have to go through then. If the corn man left after the scrap at the garden, then we could be in for another fight like the War of Winter." The Barker, however, shook his head. "The Whistler isn't really a person, more of an identity. The Green Man will find someone else to give the power to. He has before, he will again." "Not tonight, though. Tonight, he has to answer to us," Randy said. That was how we had come to be heading for the mountain, where she'd been held captive. "She's in one of the cave systems deep in the Juniper Mountains. If we can get in and get her out quickly, we might be able to avoid a fracas." We came to the base of the mountain and found that this probably wasn't going to happen bloodlessly. The base of the mountain was blocked by a thick field of corn. That probably doesn't sound terribly scary, but we had run into corn creatures before, and the presence of a field of golden corn was a pretty good indicator they were planning an ambush. The Gordling began to growl in his little orange throat, but I noticed he didn't seem to be in a hurry to leave Randy's side either. "What you think?" Randy said, all of us stopping at the edge. "Well, at least we know we're heading in the right direction." "Funny. What do you think we should do about this?" "I've got an idea," Cannon said, reaching for a canister on his belt and holding it up for Randy to see. Randy's eyes got very large. "Is that a grenade?" Cannon smirked. "It's an incendiary explosive. I don't know if it'll take. It's pretty wet, but it might help us get through." "Couldn't hurt," Randy said. "I won't ask where you got a grenade from, but I suppose I'm glad you have it." Cannon drew back and threw the thing into the corn. It went up with a loud chuffing sound, and as the corn took flame, there was a loud roaring sound from the depths of the field. It was mad. We had roused a monster from the depths, but as the fire died in the wet of the maize, the corn remained. "Well, guess we're going in," Randy said, drawing his club. Marta snorted. "You want to go in there? You know that's where they're waiting for us." "It's a suicide run," Cannon said. "It's the only way to the cave opening," Randy said, pointing to the yawning mouth beyond the cornfield. "What choice have we got?" They nodded, and we headed carefully into the cornfield. The corn parted in that whispery way that it has as we came into the depths of the living maze. We stayed close, weapons at the ready, as we prepared for the coming ambush. It reminded me of a scene from one of the Jurassic Park movies that I'd watched a lot as a kid. The group in the movie was cutting through the tall grass, weapons in hand, heads on a swivel, and as they went, the camera angle showed the raptors making a trail through the grass. I prayed the same wasn't happening to us, but it was hard to ignore the noises. The Gordling, riding on Randy's shoulder, was growling again, and as he turned from right to left, it was hard not to imagine Randy with two heads. Something was coming from the corn, something big and angry. I could see them rustle by as they made their way through. They were too quick to catch a good look at, but they were familiar. These were the things that we had seen at the battle in the parking lot, and as we made our way through the corn, they stalked us relentlessly. "We should have been out of here by now," Randy whispered, more to himself than anyone. "This cornfield can't be that big." It started as a cry from the back of the group. The word came up the line that something had snatched Farmoon and pulled him into the corn. As we tried to figure out what to do, someone got snatched from the front of the line too, and it seemed that Randy had had enough. "Cut it down," Randy yelled, his own club coming out, and the Brandylow began swiveling their weapons as they attempted to make holes in the corn. I saw now that some of those clubs had axe heads and spikes worked into them, and they smashed into the corn with vigor. That seemed to agitate the creatures further, and as we made little clearings in the corn, they came crashing out to hit our line. They battered at us, their arms as thick as tree branches, but we seemed to have them outnumbered. These weren't the same collection of botanists and silly creatures that we'd had at the War of Winter, and it was the low point of winter to boot. Spring was on the horizon, and these corn creatures were not as formidable as they had been on New Year's. As they started to fall back into the field, I could sense the Brandylow were feeling pretty powerful. Many of those assembled here had watched us struggle with the corn creatures, even with the help of two wizards, and it was invigorating to watch them backed into the corn with relative ease. Then, the earth shook, as the biggest corn creature I had ever seen began to rise from the field. He was massive, 10 feet, then 20, and as he rose, he seemed to threaten the mountain with his size. He was a hoary mass of vines and stalks, his legs as thick as the pillars that held up the Greek ruins in the magazines I had read as a kid, and his eyes glowered down at us with fury. As he rose up, I think we all sensed the futility of fighting him. He could fall on us like a tidal wave any time he felt like it. The Brandylow around me began to back away, and I could tell that the group would break soon and run. Those eyes were the worst thing about him. They looked like coals from hell, as they surveyed us, and when his arms moved, he creaked and groaned like an oak in a high wind. He flexed his massive arms, preparing to smash us into paste, and that was when I saw the barker come running up. His coattails streamed out behind him, and he was waving his arms and screaming as the cacophony raged around him. "Stop! Stop! Corn Man! Listen to me! You and I have never been at odds with one another, and I would seek to end this without further bloodshed." The gargantuan looked down at him, looking ridiculously like a lion regarding a mouse, and his arms returned to its sides as it listened. "The Cold One calls," he thundered, and I heard snow shift on top of the mountain as his voice rose from the valley. "We are born of his power, Barker, and we must answer." I looked around, trying to assess if we were being played or not, but it seemed the Corn Man and the Barker had entered a battle of words in the midst of our skirmish. "We have no quarrel with thee, only with the one you serve." "Then why did you use fire against us and invade our field?" "You and yours attacked first, Corn Man, not us. Our fight is not with you, but we seek to see the scales return to balance." "Balanced scales? Of what do you speak?" the giant asked, but the question sounded perfunctory. "You know, as I do, that the Green Man has gone too far. His taking of the lady under a banner of peace was wrong. What's worse, he pressed the two of us into service and made us a party to his dishonor. You have always been a noble creature, operating under the rules of your legend and granting favor to those who prove worthy. If he had taken her at the end of a righteous siege, I would stand beside his actions. But he violated the laws of custom and accord, and that cannot stand." The Corn Man seemed to have no answer for this, and I felt some of the tension slip from him. "Let us through and take your corn creatures elsewhere. Leave the field, and let us make the scales right again." The Corn Man contemplated this, tilting his head as he thought it over, and making a sound like roots pulled up by a high wind as he did. The corn creatures had stopped their attack, pulling back to the cornfield as their master thought this over. And when he began to sink into the ground, the creatures ran back to the corn as it descended with him. As that massive head dipped down into the sheaf of green, I heard a voice like an Old Testament God come rumbling from the earth. "Once more, my friend, I will stand aside. Your words are true, and I will not come to the Cold One's call again. Farewell." The Corn Man and his minions descended into the ground, and as the corn disappeared, we found the brandy-low that had been taken as they lay in the mud. They were beyond saving, beaten to a pulp, and the blood would have been all over the corn if it hadn't sunk into the earth. Losing two to a force like this was something, but we could hardly weather the loss. God only knew what was waiting for us in the cave, and it might be all hands on deck when we got there. These two might make the difference between victory and joining the Corn Man in the ground. As the entrance to the cave loomed large before us, I wondered what else might be in store for us today. "We're going in," Randy said, "and we ain't coming out without her." I'd only thought it was dark outside, but as the cave swallowed us up, we were plunged into that formidable darkness of which fables are written about.
You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.